Okay, so we have three topics tonight, which is karma, wheel of life, and paticca samuppada. Now, it's quite a lot. I normally try and finish in 1 hour, but I think I am going to overrun a little bit. These three teachings, karma, wheel of life, and paticca samuppada, explain how we come to be in a state that we are in, whether feeling happy, unhappy, sad, etc. So in Buddhism, there's nothing like things happening accidentally in terms of how we feel. How we feel is actually dictated by basically what's gone on before. And also, there isn't a belief in fate. You know, fate, sometimes some people mean fate as if, everything is pre-written, there's a grand plan which is being followed, and it's not like that at all either. So it's not accidental, neither is there a grand plan. Each and every moment, we can make a choice and influence what will happen to us in future. So, and that is why liberation is possible, because, we can decide whether we want to be skillful about our conduct or unskillful about our conduct. And being unskillful will lead to suffering. So starting with karma, karma is, karma is basically a Buddhist law which basically says that actions which we have willed, in other words, there's an intention behind it, and these are sometimes referred to as volitional actions. So those actions conducted, whether they're conducted through body, so that's like physical actions, through speech, and through mind. So, we're just thinking about something. They leave traces within our being that manifest in future. And this manifestation in future will cause us to experience the future events either as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, according to the traces of the original action that we laid down. And I will actually give a concrete example so that it's more easily understood. But karma is one of the most misunderstood and confusing aspects of Buddhist practice. And this may be partly due to its adoption in the West into our language to mean a variety of things. And in Buddhism, it has a specific meaning to accurately describe a process. And it is this specific meaning that should be understood by us as Buddhists. So, I'll just give some examples of how it's sometimes used in everyday language. And this is not what it means in Buddhism. So, for example, one often hears, say, for example, if one is born with a limp or a bad leg, that it is karma, it is a retribution for something done in past lives. That is not quite how it is in Buddhism. Or sometimes it is looked on as just simply fate, when people say it was my karma for this to happen. So, these are examples of how it's not looked on in Buddhism. Karma in Sanskrit means action or doing. So it's, as I said, when the actions are intentional, they are karmic. So it is only actions that are willed, that there is an intention behind them to bring out a specific result, which are karmic. So intention is the key. And so, I refer to them as volitional actions. And although I don't know Latin, I believe that the word volition in Latin has the root meaning I will. Now, not all actions are volitional. So examples of actions which are not volitional and therefore do not leave karmic traces are, for example, when we touch a hot stove and our hand pulls away. And this is done before a thought has arisen. It's just a natural reflex action. And that is not karmic because there was no thought nor intention behind it. Another example of an action which is not karmic is, say, if we are walking along with someone and that person stumbles, and before we have thought of anything, our hand just goes out to steady them. That action is not karmic. But having steadied that person, then, all sorts of thoughts go within us, like, we did well, didn't we, to help that person? So that, all those things are karmic, but the initial instinctive reaction to just steady someone is not karmic. And the volitional actions do not just simply apply to physical actions. It can apply to verbal and mental behavior. So, for example, to idly gossip and slander someone is a verbal action and will leave karmic outflows. Similarly, just wishing that, I wish winter wasn't coming, that I wish it was warmer, that is a mental action, and that is karmic. Or similarly, wishing for a perfect job, or a perfect relationship, or a perfect car. These are all mental actions and volitional and will have karmic outflows. So it's simply just thinking about it, thinking about wanting a car or a better car, just thinking about it, that will leave karmic outflows. And karmic actions need not just be bad or unskillful actions. So rather than use words bad and good, generally I tend to use words skillful and unskillful, because there's nothing in Buddhism where we can judge something ultimately as bad or something ultimately as good. So karmic actions which need not just simply be unskillful, they could be skillful actions, like wanting to help victims of an earthquake, for example. There is an intention behind helping, but it's a skillful action, but it is still karmic. In other words, it will have outflows. Or actions could be karmic and neutral. For example, if we are offered a choice between tea and coffee, and we choose coffee over tea, that's neither skillful nor unskillful. That's a neutral action. So the actions could be good or skillful, they could be unskillful, or they could be neutral. So according to the theory of karma in Buddhism, karmic actions will ripen and bear fruit. The ripening or result of karmic action is called vipaka. Vipaka means ripening. And we experience the fruit of our actions as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, according to whether the karmic action that laid down those seeds was good, was skillful, unskillful, or neutral. So, and this ripening may happen within a short time, or it can take a very, very long time. And classically, it can take lifetimes, many lifetimes. But once a karmic seed has laid down, it will not disappear of its own accord. It will ripen at some point. So that is, all volitional actions have ripening at some point. And for ripening to occur, then the right sort of circumstances must be present for ripening to occur. And the reason why karmic actions bear fruit, so for example, if we have craved after something and, either gone out and done something about it or thought about it, the reason why there are outflows from that is because our karmic actions, verbal, physical, mental actions, lay down, sometimes subtly, but sometimes not very subtly, a pattern of our behaviors and our preferences. So when we have wished for something, we have shown a preference for something, and that's laid some sort of trace within our being, so that in future, when the right sort of circumstances occur, we will, that seed will ripen, and we will want the same thing again. Or when we see the same thing again, we go out and grab it. So, and this is how we weave the world that we live in individually, each one of us. So although outwardly we are all living in the same world, we are all listening to this talk, we are all on our laptops, so outwardly it seems we are all in the same world. Inwardly, we are all living in different worlds. And what we are experiencing from moment to moment is those pattern of preferences, attitudes, etc., that have been laid down in the past. So that's what we are experiencing now. Whether we find something pleasant, whether we find something as suffering, that all is due to the attitudes that have been laid down by our previous seeds. So, this sounds very abstract. So if I give an example to help us understand this, suppose, and this example is from before the pandemic, suppose that I travel to work every day in the middle of the rush hour, and I travel by tube, and being the rush hour, when I leave home and I am waiting at the tube station, waiting for the tube, I'm all hyped up to ensure that I get a seat no matter what. And there, the tube is crowded, there are people waiting on the platform, but as soon as the doors open, I barge in and I push everyone aside, including an old lady who can hardly walk, and head straight for an empty seat, pushing and shoving people aside. And as I'm fit and healthy, and having barged and pushed, I managed to get a seat. So I sit there smugly, congratulating myself and not daring to look at the old lady who can hardly stand. So the fact that I have congratulated myself on my performance and felt smug means that I have endorsed the behavior. I find it, find the seat has given me a pleasant feeling. And so what happens? On the next day, when the tube comes, having got the seat on the previous day and having quite liked it, we do the same thing again. We push and barge and make sure that we get a seat. And day after day, this pattern gets endorsed. And then it becomes so insistent that I am on the point of barging in even before people have disembarked. You know, so important has this behavior become to me. And, you know, if I'm callous, I would say, so what? You know, I get a seat, I travel comfortably to work. But the problem is that all is subject to change. You know, one day we will find that we cannot either get a seat, and because we're so used to getting a seat, it would not be a good start to the day. Or if someone has words with me for barging in, you know, there are angry words, and that doesn't make a good start to the day. That's an unpleasant feeling. So, you know, all these seeds, unskillful actions have laid down seeds which will cause us suffering in future, because everything is impermanent and circumstances will at some point, it could be lifetimes you could pass, but we will experience the result of those seeds. And so this is how we sometimes become difficult, angry people, or sometimes, you know, always have to have sensual pleasures, because, you know, our behavior endorses all that. Now, just looking at this example with a different viewpoint, say that on the first day I felt tempted to barge in and arm the old lady out of the way. And then, having got the seat, I realized the impact of what I have done. And looking at the old lady, we have a regret for our behavior. And we get up and offer the seat to the old lady. So the sense of regret or remorse for an unskillful action can actually lessen the impact of the bad karmic action. And so this is how it is possible to reduce the effect of karma. In other words, our good actions help to de-amplify the unskillful actions. And so that is how it is possible to purify our being. So what karma does is it lays seeds or mental traces of our being, and that lays down a certain attitude within us. And it is this attitude which then determines how we feel in certain circumstances in future. So the same event can be experienced as painful or pleasant by different people according to the mental traces that they have laid down. So either not getting the seat on the tube may ruin my day, and that's suffering, or the same situation, having seen the old lady and offering the seat to the old lady, lays down a different attitude within us. And so this is how we weave the world which we inhabit individually. So, as I've said before, skillful actions can be karmic as well. And the practice of Buddhism is to reduce the unskillful karmic actions and encourage good or skillful karmic actions. And the effect of this is that the stream of activity of that particular being is purified, and transformation from suffering towards liberation becomes possible. Now, one important thing to bear in mind about the teaching of karma is that this process is entirely impersonal. In other words, there is no lawgiver or God, in the Christian sense of the word God, sitting in judgment. There is no external agency that has an unseen power that punishes ill deeds and rewards good deeds. So it's not like the idea of sin, for example, in Christianity. It's simply an impersonal process. That's how it happens. It doesn't need anyone to plan it or drive it, except our actions. Okay, so now we will go to the next topic, which is wheel of life. So we've said that karmic outflows can happen in a short time, or they can take a long time, as much as several lifetimes. So there is in Buddhism belief in rebirth, but the type of rebirth is conditioned by accumulated karma. And I should clarify here that the aim of the Buddhist practice is to actually bring about an end to this continuous round of rebirth. So liberation is actually bringing to end this continuous round of rebirth. In the West, this may sound strange because we may think that if I'm born again, then I can do all the things that I wanted to do, enjoy again things that I've enjoyed in this life, and then enjoy them in the next life. However, in the Buddhist worldview, any rebirth is suffering. In thinking we will enjoy and do what we want to do in next life is again to fail to see the basic delusion of I, myself, me. That is, I can only have pleasure and extricate pleasure because, according to Buddhist worldview, pleasure cannot be separated from suffering. Where there is pleasure, there will be suffering, because when pleasure comes to an end, then suffering arises. So, the pleasure and suffering can't be separated. They are part of the same coin. So, therefore, in thinking we will extricate pleasure in the next life is not what we aim for. What we aim for is to bring the process to an end. And when the process is brought to an end, there is no more rebirth, but what there is liberation. And in liberation, there is neither birth nor death. So for a Buddhist, rather than wishing for rebirth, the aim is total liberation from rebirth. That is enlightenment or nirvana. Now, we can look on rebirth in two senses in Buddhism. I've talked about rebirth from life to life. But there is also another sense in which we can look at rebirth. We can look at rebirth from moment to moment. So, like we wander from one state of being to another state from life to life, we are actually continually doing so from moment to moment in this very lifetime. So for example, we may get up and it's a nice sunny morning and we are elated. So that's one sort of being that we have taken on. That's what we are born as an elated being. And then we go to the bus stop and the bus does not arrive. We are angry, upset, and agitated. So elation, we die as the person who was elated, and we are then born as the angry or upset or agitated person. And the bus eventually arrives, but there are no seats, so we are miserable. So the angry, upset, agitated person is born as a miserable person. We reach our destination, and as maybe our habit, we get a cup of coffee and a muffin to start the day. And on the first taste of coffee and muffins, we are momentarily happy, so that miserable person dies, and instead there's born a happy being. So it goes on throughout the day. So this is how we can look on rebirth as well. One moment dies, and then we're born in another moment, and then another moment, and then another moment. So this continuous migrating from one state to another is actually described in a Buddhist teaching device called the Wheel of Life. And I'll put up the a Wheel of Life so we can all go through it. Okay, so there is the Buddhist Wheel of Life. Let me know while I'm explaining the Wheel of Life, if what I'm talking about on the Wheel of Life, if that is not clear. For example, I might zoom in, and if all that doesn't happen at your end, just let me know. But okay, great. Okay, so we have the Wheel of Life here. Right. Sorry, one second. Right. Now just take a look at the Wheel of Life. So if you see, there is a ferocious looking being with fangs and claws holding a wheel, right? And within that wheel, there are wheels within wheels. So there's this inner wheel, then there's a wheel outside that, then there is another wheel which has got 6 sectors marked out. And then on the outermost rim, there are actually 12 pictures which are there. Okay, so that's the Wheel of Life. Now this being here, who's holding the Wheel of Life, is Mara. And this Wheel of Life actually depicts samsara, or mundane life, or everyday life, where we are wandering from one state of being to another state. And this samsara is the state of suffering that we experience. And while not all the states are unpleasant, even the pleasant ones come to an end. So even pleasant feelings bring suffering, as they will come to an end. So in other words, mundane everyday experience is unsatisfactory, dukkha. And dukkha is actually represented by this Mara. Mara, actually, we've come across Mara in the story that I gave, where Mara appeared to Buddha just before Buddha's enlightenment. So Mara represents the world of change, things coming to be and ceasing to be. And that is why we have suffering, because of this change, things coming to be and ceasing to be. So nothing is graspable. We try to grasp things, or even views or judgments, and it's like trying to grasp a fistful of water. We just can't manage it. It'll just slip through. And that is the world of change that we inhabit. And that's what Mara represents. And that is why Mara looks so so demonic, so fierce, because that is how samsara appears to us. So, we have states of anxiety, depression, fear, all those states appear quite unpleasant to us. And that's what Mara is here is representing. So now we'll look at the innermost wheel. I'll just zoom in. So here we have three animals. There's a rooster, a snake, and a boar. Now, these three animals represent the three fires which we have already talked about in a previous lesson. And these are the fires of greed, which is represented by the rooster, aversion, which is represented by the snake, and the fire of delusion, which is represented by the boar. And they are called fires because they have energy, quite often wild energy, that pushes us in one direction of wanting this, and then in another direction of wanting something else. And delusion is not seeing reality as it is. And that is also a fire, because it is this wrong seeing that is fueling our drives. Because if we were not, it's called avidya, ignorance. If that did not exist, then we would have wisdom. And if we had wisdom, we would be seeing reality exactly as it is. And we'll see reality as ungraspable. It's impermanent, subject to change, and that's how we would see it. So it's these three fires which are actually driving us round in samsara, round and round this wheel. Now, I'll come to this wheel, which is next to the innermost wheel, in a moment. But if I look at this wheel, with where my arrow is scrolling it, this part, the main part of the wheel, has 6 segments, and these 6 segments actually represent different psychological states that we are propelled into by these fires from moment to moment. So the 6 states that we inhabit in samsara are, I'll just name them first, and then I'll just go through each one in detail. The state at the very top is the heavenly realm, when everything is going swimmingly well for us. So that's the heavenly realm. Now, if you're used to looking at Wheel of Life, usually the Wheel of Life goes clockwise, but this one is actually going anti-clockwise. So that if I go anti-clockwise, the next state is the realm of the fighting demons, called asuras. Then the next sector underneath that is the realm of animals. And the next sector right at the bottom is the hell realms. The next one going anti-clockwise is the realm of the hungry ghosts or pretas. And finally, the 6th sector is that of human realm. And actually, this we have actually a better version of this wheel that we use at the society, but we couldn't get it with enough resolution. So unfortunately, I can't use it today. But if there is more detail, so I've got a copy of it, and if there is more detail in that wheel, I'll just point it out. I'll just say what it describes. So it's much more detailed than the one that I'm using. Okay, so I'll go through each of these states that we inhabit, that we go through from life to life, from moment to moment. So the heavenly realm is the realm of the devas, celestial beings. Sometimes they're referred to as gods with a small g, so it's not the same idea of God as in Christianity. It's simply God meaning celestial beings. So the heavenly realm is the abode of the devas. And sorry, one clarification. When I refer to all these beings, these are not, don't think of them as beings that exist in some realm somewhere. These are our psychological states. So these, when I talk about these beings, I'm actually referring to our psychological states. So in this realm are the celestial beings. And in this realm, because of the good karma that has been accumulated, the beings enjoy fine aesthetic pleasures and pursuits and lead a relatively carefree existence. So it's a happy existence. They enjoy long lives, but because of these fires, because of karma accumulated, the good karma wears out. And it is said that when the lifespan of the celestial beings come to an end, sweat accumulates under their armpits and their clothes turn grimy. And when devas' pleasant existence comes to an end, they are propelled to lower destinies. So the sectors at the top are perhaps more pleasant than the three at the bottom. So once the karma of the heavenly beings wears out, they are propelled into the lower realms. So this is what this particular wheel, where I'm scrolling with the arrow, is actually showing. So here, it's got two sides. There's a light side and there's a dark side. The dark side is showing beings plunging from auspicious existences or happy existences towards unhappy existences. So they're plunging downwards into the lower realms. And then on the light side, it shows beings rising from the lower realms and going towards the upper realms. So that's what that particular wheel is showing. So although the realm of the celestial beings is a pleasant one, the Buddhist does not aim to be in this realm, because being subject to change, this too is state of suffering. So it's not as if we are trying, our practice is not aimed towards getting us from this lower realms into this upper realm, because this upper realm is as unsatisfactory as all the others, because it is subject to change. It will come to an end and bring about suffering. So the aim of the Buddhist is to actually get off this picture completely. So when a person is liberated, the person is no longer in this picture of wheel of life. The person has stepped out of it. And when I use the term person, that's using the term loosely. So now, heavenly realm is the state, for example, when we feel totally satisfied with the world and all seems to be going swimmingly well. For example, we open the curtains in the morning and it's a warm, sunny day greeting us, and all is well with the world. We ourselves are sweetness and light, and we greet everyone, we smile with everyone, everyone is pleasant to us. At work, we somehow get all the difficult tasks get done without any problems. So, everything is just going so swimmingly well with our world. That's the state we are in this heavenly realm. So going anti-clockwise, if I then go on to the realm of the fighting demons, called asuras, you will see that there is a tree growing in the realm of the asuras, but you will also see that the branches of the tree are actually in the heavenly realm, and those branches are bearing fruit. You can see the red fruit on the branches. Now, the state of the fighting demons is a state where the beings only understand force and anger. So, with the tree growing in the realm, but the branches in the heavenly realm, as you can see, the devas of the heavenly realm are helping themselves to the fruit which is in their realm. And this drives these asuras, this really enrages the asuras. So here you can see the asuras as a fighting army wanting to fight the heavenly beings. And so, this state is the state when you are very angry, enraged. And something very interesting that's being shown here is you can see that this being here is actually chopping the tree. So this very tree that they're fighting over, he's actually chopping it. And that what they're fighting over will come to nothing, because if he's chopping the tree, there won't be any fruit anymore anyway. So this is how, when we are enraged, this is how we are blinded by those passions. And we do stupid things, like he's chopping the tree. The actual tree that they want and that they're fighting over is actually chopping it. So that's the realm of the fighting demons. And so, for example, this is the state, for example, we are in when we call a call center with a complaint that makes us very angry. The call center takes 20 minutes for the call to be answered. The person dealing with our query does not understand our complaint and just keeps on giving a standard, unhelpful response. And very soon we are seething and start shouting and screaming at the person at the other end. So we are in this realm of the angry demons when that happens. Now, looking at the next sector, that of the animals. Animals in the East do not have the sentimental connotations we have in the West. In the East, animals are seen as helpless beings having to take whatever is just handed out to them. Whereas, in the West, we look on animals very sentimentally. So what's represented here is not that. What is represented is the helplessness of being in the animal realm. So they symbolize blind, passive, surrendering to instinct and necessity, where we are feeling totally helpless. So, for example, say again, an example, this is an example from before the pandemic. Say that, we have a job in central London, we live in outer suburbs, quite far away from central London. And, every day, we have to take a train into work. It takes us a good part of 1 to 2 hours to get to work in a crowded train. And then we do a day's work, and we go back again, a long commute, and we get back home, and we hardly have time to eat, and it's time for bed, and then starts the next day, the same thing. We feel we are in a rat race. We do not enjoy what you're doing, but we have a huge mortgage and children to feed, and we see no way out. We are in a rat race, and we just do not see a way out. We feel totally helpless. So this is when we are in this animal realm, when we feel like that. The next realm, right at the bottom, is the hell realm. And this is a realm of extreme pain and suffering. In Buddhism, there is no judgment or punishment by an external deity. The pain and torture that we are experiencing are the consequences of our habitually and willfully indulging in greed, anger, and delusion, and we end up in hell states. So, I gave the example of this monk who chases after a golden ball and is left hanging onto a high branch in the tree. That's an example of ending up in a hell state. We are in a precarious position which is where we've been driven there by our desire and delusion. So there are 16 hells in Buddhism. There are 8 hot hells and 8 cold hells, all of increasing intensity of pain and torture. So if we look at this picture, it describes the pain and torture quite well. So here you see a vat being boiled under fire by these beings, the vat is actually boiling other beings, so that's pain and torture. There are people being hung upside down here, and as I say, the wheel of life at the society is much more graphic. There are people who are being decapitated, and all sorts of unpleasant things going on. So that's the hell realm. And the next realm, going anti-clockwise in this picture, is the realm of the hungry ghosts. And these hungry ghosts are called pretas. So if you look at here where my arrow is scrolling, you can see a representation of a preta. So it's a being with an enormous belly and very thin pipet-like neck. And because of their huge stomachs, they have a huge appetite, but because of their narrow necks, they can never take in enough to satisfy their hunger. So they are forever hungry. And something that's not shown in this wheel very well, but is in the wheel which is at the society, it also actually shows a being that is thirsty, thirsty with craving, and it is going to a stream. So there is a stream shown here, but in that picture is much more vivid. It's showing a being that's going to the stream to quench its thirst, quench its desire. And when it's trying to quench its thirst, the water turns to fire. So this picture quite well represents the state of desire that we are in. So, you know, desire just leads to more desire. We are forever hungry, like this Preta being is. Or desire turns to fire. You know, what we are desiring turns to fire. Either we, you know, just again, like in that example of the monk chasing the golden ball, he was left in a precarious position. That is an example of how trying to quench his thirst, that water turned to fire. So that quite well represents the state of desire. So this is when we want something very badly. We try everything, but nothing seems to work out. The more we fail, the bigger the desire becomes. Or we may get what we want and it fuels even more desire. Or we might get something that we're desiring after, and after having it for a while, having got it, we lose interest in it, and then because of karma, out we go looking for more things to satisfy our appetite. So that's what this realm is showing. And the last sector, the sixth one, is the realm of the human beings, human realm. And here we see depicted all the important themes of human life. Again, this wheel of life, which I'm using, is not very descriptive, but in the wheel that we have, the society, we can see people having, being entertained at a dinner, having a good time of it, a woman giving birth, someone tending to a sick person, someone meditating. There's a field, here you can see a field being plowed, for example. So these are, and here you see perhaps someone being given religious teachings. So these are all activities within our human realm. So it depicts the vast range of freedom of choice that we have. And what it is, so, you know, actually the whole wheel is actually showing our lives, you know, samsara. So in that sense, the whole wheel is showing our human life. But what's special about this state, where is the state when we are really truly human. So in the human realm, in this particular realm, what is depicting is when we are truly compassionate, truly caring, truly altruistic, because it's only from the human realm that we can hope to escape from the wheel. This is because it's only from the human realm that we can choose to carry out the practice, which is necessary to bring about the end of suffering and to be liberated. So human realm is seen to be a very fortunate realm to be born in, because that's the realm from which we can escape this life of suffering. But then to do that, we really have to become truly human beings in true sense of the word. So sometimes, you know, if we use the word gentleman or gentlewoman in the old sense of the word, you know, so in the old days, the gentleman would be truly courteous, truly, you know, altruistic, and so that's the sort of state that's being depicted in this sector. So we should learn during meditation in our daily lives to recognize how we are going from one state to another, how these fires are arising in us and how they are just propelling us to go round and round this wheel in different sectors. So, in the Noble Eightfold Path, one of the factors was right awareness. So when we have right awareness, we are aware of the arising of the fires. We are aware of being driven around this wheel. So the practice of awareness, rather than us just being willy-nilly being driven around this wheel, if we become aware of it, then we can do something about it. And that is what the practice is enabling us to do. Okay, so that's the wheel, this wheel with 6 sectors. And now we will look at the outermost rim. Lavinia, if you could put up the slide of the word paticca samuppada, and I can stop the share from my side. Thank you. Okay, so this is the final topic that we'll go through. As I said, I'm afraid I will be running over time today. Now, there is this teaching called Paticca Samuppada in Buddhism, and it's translated as dependent origination or arising due to condition. And what it means is that what we are experiencing now depends on causes and conditions that have gone before. So this is a profound teaching, which is actually very difficult to understand. And indeed, when Buddha once explained this teaching to Ananda, his disciple and caretaker, Ananda could not contain himself and he blurted out, "What a wonderful teaching, I understand it," or words to that effect. And Buddha rebuked him. And Buddha said, "Say not so, Ananda. Deep indeed is this Paticca Samuppada." In other words, he was telling Ananda, don't look at the superficial meaning, which Ananda had understood. And Buddha realized that he had understood only the superficial meaning. So Buddha said to him, "Say not so, Ananda. Deep indeed is this Paticca Samuppada." It is through not understanding, through not penetrating this doctrine, that beings have become entangled like a matted ball of thread, unable to pass beyond woeful states of existence and samsara. So I will explain the teaching. It's a very difficult teaching, and rather than explain it in detail, which it's not really possible to do in this course, I will just mention it in outline. And the purpose of this is that you're at least aware of the gist of this teaching. And although the understanding of this may be difficult at this stage, at least you're aware of it. And, in Buddhism, we can never, ever hope to understand things in the first go. We just have to keep on revisiting and revisiting and revisiting. And hopefully, if you're aware of this teaching, you can revisit it and revisit it. And eventually it will become clear. So the teaching explains how we come to view the world as we do and how we act and behave in this world as we do. So it basically says that there are causes and conditions which bring about a present delusion and that propel us. There are causes and conditions that propel us into delusion, basically. So Lavinia, you can take the slide off. I'll just put up the wheel of life again. Right, so this teaching is described in the outermost rim, where there are 12 pictures, and I will go through them one by one, and it describes how one thing leads to another. So to start with, the first picture here shows ignorance or state of ignorance. And the pictorial representation here is that there is a blind man leading a blind man. So ignorance is like blind leading blind. So that's what this picture represents, ignorance. So dependent on ignorance arises the next picture, which is volitional formations. Volitional formations are the things, our attitudes, our judgments, our behavior, pattern of behavior that we have laid down. So that is because of ignorance that we have laid down that pattern. You know, just like that man who had to have a seat in the tube laid down certain patterns of behavior. It was because of ignorance of what true reality is. He thought, you know, he could always have a seat and, you know, manipulated things and circumstances to have the seat. But so that was ignorant. That's not how it works. So what's laid down is shown in this picture called samskaras, and the pictorial representation here is a potter making things, just like samsara creates thoughts and objects of thoughts. Now, dependent on ignorance and the samskaras arises consciousness, which is the next picture. And consciousness is represented by, sorry, one second. Yeah, the consciousness is represented by a monkey picking fruit here. Just like a monkey jumps about here and there, that is what our consciousness does. So the ignorance and the samskaras give rise to our present consciousness. So the ignorance and the samskaras that we have laid down in the past are then come into the present moment of consciousness. And then the next picture represents nama rupa. Nama rupa is the physical and mental entity that we are. So dependent on consciousness arises the our physical and mental being, our present mental and physical being. And that is represented by a man in a boat on a flowing river, just like our physical and mental states are in a constant flow. And dependent on Namarupa, that's dependent on our physical and mental makeup, arise the six-fold sense bases, which is the next picture, which is depicted by a house with windows and doors. So the house with doors and windows open is like our sense bases. You know, there are six sense bases in Buddhism, that of seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting, and then the sixth one is the one of mental thoughts, being aware of mental thoughts. So you might remember that from the past lesson. That's on par with, you know, seeing, hearing, etc. So dependent on Namarupa arises sixfold sense bases represented by the house, and dependent on the sixfold sense bases arises contact, and contact is depicted by lovers embracing. So here what's happening is we've got the six sense bases of hearing, touching, smelling, thinking, etc., which make contact. So that's what this is depicting. It's depicting contact. Our senses making contact with the outside world, and the pictorial representation is lovers embracing, just like our senses embrace their inputs. So that's the outside world comes in through our senses. And dependent on contact arises feeling, so which is the next picture. And feeling is depicted by a man who's been struck in one eye with an arrow, just like we are blinded by our feeling. And this feeling is the feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So here, just to give you a gist of what's happened, we have had past ignorance, and the attitudes we've laid down, they come into our present moment, where our present moment is made up of this consciousness, and our senses then make contact with the outside world through our senses. So that's the contact has been made, and then a feeling arises. A feeling is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral because of the ignorance and past samskaras which are influencing it. So that is what is being depicted. And dependent on feeling arises the next picture, which is craving. And craving is depicted by a man enjoying drink, just like alcoholic drink, wants us to want more of it. So what this picture is depicting is craving. So what's happened is, our senses have come in contact with the outside world, and then a feeling has arisen because of the past patterns of our behavior laid down. And so if we find something pleasant, then we crave for it. So therefore we become a person who's craving. And then dependent on craving arises grasping, which is the next picture, which shows someone picking fruit from a tree, just like grasping prompts us to pick and hold on to objects and things. So that's what this picture is depicting. It's depicting grasping, wanting to get hold of things. So, we come in contact with the outside world, we find something pleasant, we crave it, and then we want to grasp it. So that's what this picture is depicting. And then on grasping something, the next picture is showing becoming. And becoming is shown by a couple making love. Just like becoming is something, couple making love create a new life, and just like that, becoming is creating a new life for us. And I'll explain what I mean. So, we've experienced craving, we've gone out and grasped something, and continuously grasping at something makes us a certain type of person. So, for example, the man in the tube, he became a person who had to have a seat every day. That's what he became. Or, we become angry people who are always losing our temper. So that's all been laid down by everything that's gone on before. So this picture is so we become the angry being. So we become beings who are never satisfied. So that's what this picture is depicting. And dependent on becoming arises birth. And birth is depicted by a woman giving birth, which is self-explanatory. So what this is showing is, a past life propelled us into this moment of feeling, craving, grasping, and becoming, and we become that person, and this propels us into next life. So this is what is being depicted here, is depicting birth in a new life. This could be moment-to-moment birth or life-to-life birth. So, we die in one moment and then we're born in the next moment, carrying all this paraphernalia that we've accumulated into the next birth. And because nothing is permanent in samsara, dependent on becoming arises death, which is being shown in the next picture. And here it shows a corpse being carried by a man in a basket. This is a Tibetan wheel of life. And in Tibet, the corpses are carried high into the mountain where birds feed on them. So it shows birds here feeding on a corpse. So that's showing death. So dependent on birth arises death, and then the whole cycle repeats itself. We are in this next life, we are informed by ignorance, samskaras, everything that's been accumulated in the past. So round and round we go in this wheel of suffering. And that's what this teaching is depicting. And how the great teaching of Buddha is that through practice and insight into this process, the links to the cycle of going round and round the wheel of samsara can be broken. We are not doomed to be in this wheel forever. If any of the links of the cycle can be broken, then the whole chain of dependent origination falls apart. Even one link being broken means the whole chain falls apart and can step off the wheel of life. That is liberation or nirvana. And it is not stepping into nothingness, but it is stepping into harmony with things as they really are, where there is no sense of I wanting to cling to anything. There is just flowing with everything from moment to moment. And actually, we have already talked about how the links can be broken. The links can be broken at the links of feeling, craving, clinging, or grasping. Those are the links which we can work on. Because when we learn to work with the fires, we learn to contain them. So first of all, we recognize the fires of wanting, then we acknowledge that that fire of wanting is there, but we do not get carried away by those fires, but we are aware of the fires. We feel them within our bodies as energy. And we really do, once we start practicing, we feel it like some energy in our belly. And it's a really uncomfortable feeling if it's something that's got a lot of energy, something that we really want, but we learn to contain it. The impulse of that energy is to go out and accumulate something, but we learn to contain it. And by learning to contain it, its power and hold over us is reduced. And that is how we learn to break those links of desire, wanting, and then the whole chain has a chance to fall apart. And then we can step off the wheel. So, and that is liberation. So that brings us to the end for tonight's talk. I'm sorry I've gone on a little bit longer, but unfortunately, you know, with these three subjects, there was no other option. So we've only got 10 minutes really for any questions. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put them either to me by unmuting yourself or to Lavinia by putting them on the chat.
Hello, Rohit.
Hello.
I've got some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe my volume is too high.
No, it's fine. For
okay.
me, yeah.
All right. The first question I have is asking, what are some examples of unskillful karmic actions and thoughts?
Okay, so these are the thoughts which are driven by desire. So, for example, just sitting here dreaming of going on a holiday, for example, you know, I could be sitting here, you know, I'm talking to you, but I could still be thinking about going on a holiday and really wanting to go on a holiday, you know, that is a thought of wanting something which is driven by the fires. So that is an example of a karmic thought. It will leave traces in my being, which will have some ripening in unpleasant states. So that's an example of an unskillful thought. And a skillful thought is basically a thought that is driven by less emphasis on me and mine, so therefore being altruistic, being compassionate, are examples of skillful thoughts. And the skillful thoughts also leave karmic traces, but those are helpful ones. And it's the skillful karmic traces that we leave behind that help us to then purify our stream of consciousness. You know, the Paticca process that I described, that's purified by the skillful karmic thoughts, for example. Okay, Lavinia, you can ask the next question.
Thanks so much. All right, the next question is asking if you could recommend a book about the wheel of life that is suitable for beginners.
You know, I haven't really come across any suitable description in a book of Wheel of Life. The best thing that I've come across is, you know, this Wheel of Life that I keep on talking about, which is from Samye Ling, which is in Scotland. It's a Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Scotland. So this Wheel of Life that is at the society is from there. And on the one side of that Wheel of Life is all the pictures that I showed you. But on the reverse side is a description of what that wheel is. So that's one thing you could do is Google Samye Ling in Scotland, and they, I believe they do sell this Wheel of Life as a chart. It's quite a big one. It'll come rolled up in a tube, and on the reverse side is a description of everything that I've been through, really. Okay.
Thank you so much, Rohit. The next question is asking, what do you mean by bring the process to the end? Does it mean to end this life?
Okay, so you know what? So basically, bringing this process to an end means bringing rebirth to an end, stopping the migration from life to life, from moment to moment, from one state to another, and then when that comes to an end through liberation, through nirvana, then we are stepping away from that wheel of life. And in that realm, we are then out of samsara. We can't look at it with our ordinary understanding, our understanding which is driven by thoughts and concepts, because that realm of liberation, nirvana, is beyond thoughts, beyond concepts, and there is no rebirth, yet there is everything in it, but everything is from moment to moment, and we understand that there is nothing, we have the wisdom to know that there is nothing there that is graspable, because everything is flowing from moment to moment. It cannot be grasped, we know that, and we, well, there is no such thing as we in that realm, but there is just flowing from moment to moment. There is just being at one with the circumstances from moment to moment. And because that realm is beyond thoughts and concepts, so there are no thoughts and concepts. So if there are no thoughts and concepts, no desire can arise. Actually, desire only arises because of a process of thinking. When things are moving from moment to moment, there is nothing that stops. It's in an ever-flowing situation. Because there's nothing that is stopping, there's nothing that is grasping, there's no one trying to grasp anything, it's just simply flowing. It's just simply flowing. And that is that sense of liberation. And no matter how much I try and describe it, all of us will understand it in words, and whatever understanding that we acquire through words falls short. It is, whatever we have understood by me talking about it is actually falls short. So this is not described. Enlightenment, nirvana, is not described at all in Buddhist canon, because it's nothing that could be described. All that we can say is it's beyond thoughts, beyond concept, it's transcendental, but we can experience it, we can know it, and we can live by it. And when I have to say, when I say we, that's being rather loose. There is no such thing as we in that realm, actually. There is nothing that we can point to. So this is the problem of using language to describe it, because using language to describe it means we are using our everyday concepts, and that falls short. So I'm using the term we, just trying to communicate something to you, but it's actually not quite right either when I use the term we, but I hope I give some sort of flavor for it. But it is, as I say, it's beyond thoughts, beyond concepts, not described anywhere in the Buddhist canon, because it cannot be described. It is something to be experienced, to be discovered for ourselves. It is what Buddha discovered for himself, and Buddha says no one can discover it for us. We have to do it ourselves through the Buddhist practice. Okay, Lavinia?
Thank you so much, Rohit. So we have a few more questions, and we also have some nice messages thanking you for this lesson. Thank you for those comments. All right, let's read the next question. Can you please explain the concept of something existing and not existing at the same time? How can that be? Is there an example? Also, can you pinpoint the difference in the concept of birth and rebirth between Buddhism and Hinduism? Okay.
I'll go in the first part of the question. To go into the second part, we really don't have time. So can you just read out the first part again? Just so that I answer it accurately.
If you could explain the concept of something existing and not existing at the same time, and if there's an example.
Okay, so I gave an example when I talked about the three signs of being, about impermanence, suffering, and no self. And I gave an example of an antique table. So if you're registered for the course, then if you go back to the notes of lesson 2, I have given an example of that, but I will describe it in some other way for you. So something existing or not existing. Let me describe it this way. You know, when we see something, our senses grasp it and then go on to build pictures. Now, when our senses have grasped it, our brains start processing it. But while our brains are processing that information, that moment has already moved on. So, you know, our brain is stuck on having seen something and and is actually processing that. And during that time, the reality has actually moved on. So what our senses do is our senses actually grasp something and make something of it. Whereas what happens in reality is that that moment is continually flowing. It doesn't stop for us to grasp something. And that is when there is really, we cannot say whether something exists, whether something does not exist, because in a way it has come into existence because, you know, our senses have seen something. But as soon as our senses have seen it, it's gone. Whereas we grasp onto something and we make something of it. So we make it into an object. Whereas in reality, it is ever moving, it does not stop, and therefore it is straddling between existence and non-existence. It doesn't actually come into being. We cannot say that it comes into existence, but it's also wrong to say that it does not exist. It's not like, you know, we are seeing something that is not there. It is there, except that it's already moved on and we have grasped onto it with our senses, and then we're processing it with our senses and building pictures around it and making it into something, whereas it is not that thing that our senses are making. It is something that is moving moment to moment, and when saying moment to moment, we are not able to say whether it exists. We're not able to say that it does not exist. That is the world of non-duality, whereas our brains cannot compute that. Our brains cannot understand that, and that's why we cannot understand enlightenment. So I hope that gives some sort of answer to your question. But as I said, to answer the question about Hinduism would take too long today. So with that, you know, we come to 8 o'clock, so I'll say goodbye, and we will meet in a week's time where we talk about paramitas, where, you know, so far we've been talking about teachings which are common to all the schools of Buddhism. But next week we're going to talk about Mahayana Buddhism, how some of the teachings then developed into Mahayana school of Buddhism. So that's the subject for next week. So hope to see you all next week.